as of the previous chapter, chapter 96, Federier's Quest, we are put into a couple strange scenarios. Obviously, Laxus versus Kyrian is really starting to rev up, and we have Laxus, who looks to be now on the back foot on his opponent. He's definitely getting pressed, and it's very clear who has the advantage in that fight. Whereas over with Urza, Gray, Gajil, kind of characters we didn't really see. Natsu and Lucy are still dealing with Haku's ability to turn into the plush dolls. But I feel like that like plot line is really just gonna kind of hold them more on the side until they either run into Misaki and Kiria, or like I don't know if they're gonna come into a recovered Mad Mole and Scolion, or what exactly the plan is with their characters in their match. But Wendy is now going to be up against Haku, and that ended the chapter, so I'm guessing the first place we're going to see in the next chapter is starts out with Haku and Wendy, even though I think that the big focus everybody wants is the Laxus Kieran fight. The Haku stuff is still important, and then obviously, seeing what's going to happen between him and Wendy is important, because Wendy's like a key player in any battle scenario. I mean, she's a healer and a support on top of everything else she has, so she just has a high value. I'd say, like, probably in terms outside of like Natsu being their strongest overall fighter, Wendy is their most important person, because especially if there's a setup where if a character recovers and gets back up, if they're counted back in this game, Wendy can pretty much fast track anybody on the Fairy Tail side back up. And I kind of want the Diablos members to have a healer, maybe Misaki, somebody on their team that can heal. They don't have to be a healer class character, but to have healing magic, I think, would be super beneficial for them. But also, I think it would add a little bit extra to the, be like kind of content for the world, like to a degree, world building, just like a smidgen, because we know, because like one thing we do know about the series is healing is lost magic, so there's not a lot of healers. So anytime there's a healer, that's actually like a big deal for the terms of understanding like the big characters. It's like how Dragon Slayers, like we still don't have a lot of Dragon Slayers when you think about the totality of the series. Obviously, like right now we're seeing the most Dragon Slayers we've ever seen, but there aren't like a lot in the world when you actually think about it. Like out of the millions and millions and millions, we've only really seen a couple Dragon Slayers when you compare it to like the actual population of wizards out there. So getting that, and then like when we started to get more Dragon Slayers at the very start, obviously getting like Gaja was crazy, the first Dragon Slayer we really got outside of Natsu, and then we started rolling into like Laxus, Cobra, Wendy. But now like Dragon Slayers are still rare, but they're not like they're not an unforeseen force. Like if a Dragon Slayer shows up, it's more like, oh cool, a Dragon Slayer. And then now it's a little different because there's obviously way more going on with dragon content in general. But I think a healer though, because really outside of Wendy and Sherry, you don't have much for like healers at all. I'm not getting like medicine people and stuff, but like actual healers. But regardless of which, the Wendy and Haku, I don't really see it as much of a fight potential. I think personally it's going to be way more of a character chapter, because what we've seen from the Dragon Eater so far is Mishima has definitely put more, like, a little bit more content to them than like your average antagonist, because like, you can tell the difference between somebody who's just a random enemy and somebody who like Mishima actually spent more time and like actually has higher plans for. You look at like Kirin and Suzaku already, they have more personality than say some of like the back people in like Alvarez or Tartaros. So like people like Nineheart, people like Easel, whereas like they're interesting bad guys. They have like cool design. Well, I'd say Easel as a fairly cool design. Nineheart's design is not that cool. His color palette's crazy. But you know what I mean, where it's like he can still be somewhat of an interesting character. It's not like they're bad characters, but it's like he's not going to design every single character to be like some uh, some like deeper character with like more to more meaning, more content. It's like you're gonna get that with pretty much any creator, where it's like some characters are just gonna be existent to be existent. Like they're gonna have their base structure, and they're not gonna get anything beyond that, which is fine. Not every character again is gonna be amazing, but all of the Dragoneers so far have been really good, and on top of that, the Black Dragon Slayer Knights Mishima has put a lot of content into. So I think similar to what we've already seen with Suzaku and Kirin, like their funnier sides, and the sides of them that are kind of like build more onto like a human side, but also on their fighting capabilities and magics and everything. I think that's gonna happen with Haku. But the difference between the other ones and Haku, and it's not just the Black Dragon Slayer Knights, but it's like all of Diablos and Haku, is Haku clearly plays into his age. Like the other ones don't have anything that it's like, oh yeah, their age comes into play of like their character. Haku is clearly a young boy. He doesn't seem to like want to like fight that aggressively. He seems way more like he's just kind of wants to get the most passive W he can and then continue onwards, because like he could potentially killed Natsu and Lucy if he really wanted to. Obviously like the variables could come into play, and obviously a different mindset Natsu. Maybe Natsu could go Dragon Force, burn the effect, and then cancel it out. But right now, as far as we know, Natsu is unsure of what to do entirely, how to fix this, and then Haku didn't want to kill them or do any actual damage to them. So I think when it comes to Haku, he's probably one of those characters that only fights when he needs to. And I don't see him really fighting Wendy, because when I mentioned like his age and stuff, his personality and Wendy's personality is definitely set more like, I think it's going to be way more of like a character confrontation. Like they're just going to kind of talk to each other, because we know Wendy is very polite. She's a very nice girl. And I think combined with Haku, like their confrontation is probably going to be way more of a, like just literally a conversation. And I personally, I'm definitely on board with the idea that like it's going to develop maybe like Haku has a crush on Wendy, because it looks like she is older. And I'm guessing on top of that, like Wendy's just being really polite and very friendly, I think will play a lot into Haku. Because if Haku's very passive, very nice and friendly, I think Wendy's just very friendly demeanor and very polite just attitude, I think will really play with Haku. Because logically, Haku will win in a fight. A 1v1, Haku should be able to completely dominate and destroy her. Whereas I don't think the plushie thing would work on Wendy, because I think Wendy could just use one of her enchantments to null the status effect. Unless it's kind of like Doom's spores, I don't really see them doing anything that would make it like be outside of Wendy's realm of stopping. Plus, I don't let's just see Haku rolling up, turning everybody to plushies, and continuously moving on, because then it's just going to be like, well, what are the characters going to do? Whereas I feel like Wendy should be able to just kind of, do her thing, cancel it out. But maybe that'll be what develops some form of interest from Haku. And maybe like, I know a lot of people are thinking like the idea of like Haku developing a crush on Wendy. And I personally think it'll probably happen, because it makes sense for the characters. It makes sense, obviously, that how their personalities are, that they won't have like a physical confrontation. They won't have a battle. Whereas the other ones, I mean, we know like Suzaku only fights like immediately if it is like an enemy of his guild. Kirin seems way more kind of like fine with battle. We don't know anything about Misaki yet, but for the most part, I think that we'll definitely. I think for the most part, we're gonna see this next chapter start out with where it left off, Wendy and Haku, and I just have this feeling that it's not gonna be a battle. It's gonna be way more set onto, okay, well, how are these characters going to interact now that they are face-to-face with each other? So the other fights and other stuff going on, I mean, that's still obviously up in the air. I still think Alexis is going to lose to Kirin. But outside of that, Wendy and Haku, I don't really see it going any other way other than it being like a, not comedic, but done in a way that it's way more towards like, well, this is how these characters are, so instead of a battle, it makes sense that this would happen. Again, I think that they'll just kind of converse with each other. And not only that, it would be a good opportunity for some Diablo's exposition, because obviously Haku would know a lot of information on his guild and whatnot, so we could get him just kind of like saying like, oh, you know, whatever stuff we need to know about like Diablos or Georg or their plans or anything like that. There's just something added on top of what we already know from Haku, because we could literally get like him and Wendy just hanging out and being buddies. I could see entirely something like Sherry and Wendy just being cool with each other, but done in a way that is beneficial for the reader. But obviously that's something we're gonna have to wait and see. Let's say Thursday. We got 12 days to the next chapter. I'm not really hyped. I know like the whole setup for this chapter is like primarily the idea of Haku and Wendy's confrontation. Because again, I think it ending with that chapter because it makes most sense that it's going to be what we've seen first. But the thing that I'm most hyped for, I mean, in general, any Black Dragon Slayer Knight attribute information, like anything that's going to tell us like what Haku Nasaki and Kirin are as Dragon Slayers, we have a somewhat of an idea with Kirin, considering he's apparently messed with the atmosphere, so atmosphere dragon. But I would like either more evidence from any of the three on what they can do, or confirmation on what exactly Kirin's Dragon Slayer type is. But outside of that, comment below, thumbs up the video, but for the like, subscribe, and check out my other videos. But now, if you already subscribed, thank you for listening.